Howdy folks, and welcome to the video for the Japanese tech tree tier 1 cruiser, the Hashidate. One of the interesting things about this series is that because I'm trying to make a bit of a historical record, doing a gameplay video for every ship in the game in a relatively narrow period of time, I choose to kind of assume that every video is a standalone thing. In other words, that you haven't seen any of my other videos. I make references to them sometimes, but in general, I don't assume that you've seen them, which means that for ships like tier 1 ships, I find myself essentially repeating things over and over again, because the truth is that at some level, and I've talked about this in other videos for tier 1 ships, all the tier 1 ships are basically the same, right? You're looking at something between a destroyer and a cruiser with some guns with medium reload and fairly bad accuracy and reasonably low hit points, but also low damage on the guns. Some of them do a little bit more damage and have fewer guns or higher reload. And I mean, I guess that's kind of true of every tier, but whatever the tuning parameters are here that Wargaming is using for tier 1, it just, to a veteran player, it feels like all these ships are kind of sort of the same. And what I mean by that is, for example, generally my strategy in tier 1 games is basically the same no matter which ship I'm playing. That doesn't mean I don't have ships I prefer. I've already said I like the Hermelin and the Chengen. There are some ships that I think are not as good. The Bougainville is not so great. Some of them are bigger than others, easier to hit. Some of them feel like they do less damage. But in general, my strategy is the same with every single tier 1 ship, which is assuming there's only 1 or 2 players, which is basically always the case, especially if there's only 1 player. I essentially park in or near the back of my capture zone, and I just delete anybody, slowly delete anybody who comes, any bots who come into my zone. This works almost 100% of the time if the other player doesn't also do the exact same thing and do it better, or simply charge me. If the other player charges me, then I have to use a different strategy. Obviously, I have to try and defend myself and run away. But in general, if the other player ignores me or doesn't pay much attention to me, this strategy basically works. And the reason is because the bots will all just head for the center of the enemy territory. So his bots will head directly for the center of my capture zone, and my bots will head for the center of his capture zone. As long as I stay in this zone or keep shooting at things that are in the zone and doing damage to them, then I can keep his team, his bot team, from capping my zone. And if he does not do the same thing to my bots, then eventually they will cap his zone. There are a few things to know about tier 1, little kinks. This is one of them. The Hermelin, which is my favorite ship, and this is the reason, has an actual band of armor down at the side. So that's why you saw me aiming for the quote-unquote superstructure. It sounds kind of funny to use that word, but basically aiming away from where I know that armor band is. It's the only one that's like that, and I don't quite know why, but it's one of the reasons I prefer the Hermelin to the other ships. That's the only one where you'll get shatters, as far as I know. And then the other thing you just have to remember is not to get too close to the bots. Outside of, I'd say 2.5 to 3 kilometers, they will just literally never hit you. Once you're inside that range, they will occasionally hit you. And if you get really, really close, then they actually can start hitting you a lot. They basically can't miss at that range. And this can happen because if you're not paying attention and you're tunnel visioned on killing one bot, they will all head directly for your position, kind of. And there's so many of them that one of them will occasionally get there. You also have to pay a certain amount of attention to the enemy player, make sure they don't get the drop on you. One of the things that I picked up on in this game, and you can see it a little bit right now, you're going to see it better later, is you just have much, much lower DPM against bow-in targets. Not because of the armor, there really is none at this level. It's more because you just actually miss a lot of shots. The dispersion is such that even at really close ranges, for some of the more narrow ships, like the Bougainville here, you see, is actually a good bit bigger. But some of the smaller ones, like the Chengen, you'll actually miss them a lot, even at really close ranges. I guess the other thing worth noting is remembering the saturation mechanics. So once an area of the ship looks dirty and damaged, you want to move on to a different area if you can. See, I'm too close to this Bougainville. That's why I'm actually taking damage from him. I'm within 2 kilometers, and that's too close. Anyway, so, you know, it's not like there's nothing to learn about Tier 1, but there's sort of a handful of things. And my point about the ships is those things are all true no matter which ship you're in. It's the exact same basic strategy. Yeah, I think this is where you're going to get a sequence here where I'm going to miss a lot of shots on this Black Swan. It has a relatively narrow... Oh, well, okay. Game wants to prove me wrong. Oh, that... Okay, that was only one hit. I think one of these here I'm just going to completely whiff. Anyway, you can see, I mean, that was the whole salvo for 99 whopping damage. Because I'm hitting the same part of the ship, assuming I hit anything at all. And I'm also missing a lot of shells. Which doesn't mean it's always bad to shoot at bow-in targets, but you can see I'm trying to reposition here to get around his side. The Hashidate itself is fine. I do find that, I don't know what it is, it's probably just psychosomatic, but I prefer these double turret ships to the ships with a bunch of single turrets. I don't know why. It's probably the same dispersion calculation, but it feels like they're better. The alpha's okay. It's 900. That's pretty good on the shells. The reload is commensurate with that alpha. The ship is relatively small, or at least, you know, small to medium. It maneuvers okay. It has no armor, but then none of them do. It's fine. It's completely underwhelming, but perfectly adequate. I still think the Hermelin is the best one, followed by the Chengen. Fairly soon now, I'm actually going to wind up in direct conflict with the enemy player. I've talked about this in other videos. There's kind of 2 stages to these games. The first stage is you just try and kill the bots as quickly as possible, and the goal is to just do it quicker than your opponent can. And then the second stage, which may or may not even happen, sometimes it doesn't, is you have to duel the enemy player. I say sometimes it doesn't happen because a surprising number of these games at this tier end for me when I use this strategy by having my team cap or having us win on points. I would say as many as 50+%. Occasionally too, you have a, you know, more of a true newbie and they actually get killed by the bots, or they take massive damage from the bots and you can just destroy them. I would say maybe, you know, 30% of the games come down to you actually having to duel the enemy player. In which case, one of the important things is having more hit points than he does when you go into that duel, as well as potentially having more bot friends. In this game, I did a bad job of the former and a good job of the latter. I have taken significant damage, which is not good, but I have a lot more bots left on my team. And you might ask, why does that matter if the bots can't do any damage? And, you know, I mean, that's a valid point. The thing is, if you have a lot of bots left and or you're winning on points, which I'm not winning on points, by the way, because I think our zone must have not had any bots in it and he accumulated a bunch of points. Or maybe this is the thing where the replay has the scores bugged out. Maybe we actually are winning. I feel like it doesn't make any sense that we'd be losing. Maybe the scores are flipped. Anyway, can't believe they never fixed that bug. But yeah, what was I saying? The problem with the position that he's in, even though he has more hit points than I do, is he's probably worried, and rightly so, that if he just ignores the bots and heads for me, then the bots will cap his zone. And of course, that's an instant win in this game mode. That's especially true if I choose to just run away. It's really hard to kill targets that are just running away from you. So I could just head all the way to J1 or J10 and just ignore him. And then if he doesn't keep my bots from capping his zone, they will cap his zone. I'm not quite sure what goes wrong for him here. He's obviously trying to keep them from capping his zone, but he's not succeeding. Of course, the easy way to do that would be to just go all the way into the zone. And for some reason, he doesn't do that. I don't know why. Anyway, that's probably more time than anyone has spent talking about the Hashidate and Tier 1 strategy in a very long time. But yes, for those of you who are new to the series and made it this far, first of all, thank you so much for being a super fan. But secondly, my goal is to record a video of gameplay for every single ship in the game. Or at least 99.9% of them. And so I'm also doing all the tier 1 ships, even if perhaps they're not as interesting. I don't expect that some of these videos will attract a ton of views. They're just there for completeness sake. It's kind of a, like I said, a historical record. Just the idea is to make sure there's a video of consistent, relatively good gameplay for every ship in the game. And yeah, you see there we capped out, which of course, again, instant win. 60,000 damage, 9 kills, the kind of numbers you only get at tier 1. Anyway, that's the Hashidate. And if you made it this far, thanks. I'll see you again I'll see you in the next video.